May 2018. The heavy, damp air enveloped the low-lying forest along the Platte River, about 10 miles from the town of Broken Bow, Nebraska. Light from the Nebraska State Forensic Team's headlights pierced through the thick fog, shining down on the moist brown clay soil marked off with yellow tape. Central, I need backup at the Platte River excavation site and send the coroner's investigator. The female investigator's voice echoed in the silent space, broken only by the wind rustling through the willows and the sound of water lapping against the shore. What began as a routine survey in a geological project had now become something entirely different. Something that had lain dormant for 12 years was about to be uncovered. Something that would answer the questions haunting Broken Bow since 2006. Amid the dark clay, they discovered a portion of human bone, dark fabric fragments, and a deformed 9mm bullet. Nearby, a rusted metal piece bore a serial number matching the GPS coordinates of a Ford F-150 truck. The vehicle once owned by Ethan Rowe, the man police had questioned in Clara Rowe's disappearance before releasing him for lack of evidence. August 2006. Clara, 19 years old, left home after a brief argument with her mother, taking her old bicycle toward the fields along the Platte River. A neighbor saw the faint light of her bike fade, then vanish into the darkness. That was the last time anyone saw her. 3 days later, the bicycle was found tipped over at the edge of the forest, its front wheel bent, with no blood, no signs of a struggle, only large truck tire tracks overlapping the smaller bike marks. The investigation closed in a deadlock. No body, no witnesses, no answers. The case file was opened under code hash 4476. Clara Rowe, then shelved after just a few months. Sheriff Daniel Harper's final report stated simply, insufficient criminal evidence, victim not located. 12 years later, when the state of Nebraska launched the Cold Case DNA Reanalysis Project, forensic technician Amy Holtz reopened box file hash 4476 in the Lincoln archives. Inside were 2 hairs collected from Ethan Rowe's truck in 2006. When tested with new mitochondrial DNA technology, the results stunned everyone, a 99.9% match with Clara Rowe's DNA. Investigator Grace Whitlow was assigned to take over the file. Reviewing old documents, she discovered a gas receipt from Ethan matching the time of the disappearance, and insurance company GPS data showing his truck stopped for nearly 40 minutes at the exact Platte River location where the body had now been revealed. The discovery at the Platte River bank was not just the end of a missing person case. It was the first domino in a chain of events exposing errors, silence, and secrets this small community had buried for over a decade. Because when authorities finally identified the suspect and made the arrest in 2018, it wasn't a drifter or an unknown killer. It was Ethan Rowe, the man who had lived in the same house as the victim, eaten at the same table, spoken with the same voice, and maintained a calm exterior while concealing an unimaginable crime. The Clara Rowe case is not just a mystery solved, it is proof of the persistence of investigators who refuse to let justice be forgotten, and of the power of forensic science, which gave the victim a voice after 12 years of silence. It is also the story of a divided community. When Clara disappeared in 2006, suspicion spread through Broken Bow like wildfire. Neighbors blamed each other. Families stopped speaking. The search for the young girl exposed deep cracks beneath the peaceful facade of the Nebraska plains. And those cracks only truly exploded when the truth was revealed 12 years later. What makes this case particularly haunting is that the answer was always so close. The suspect had been interviewed in the initial investigation, attended memorial services, looked the grieving mother in the eye, and still maintained an air of innocence. Where are you watching from today? Please leave your location in the comments below. I'm always curious to know how far these stories travel and how they connect us across distances. Tonight, we'll walk through what happened in August 2006, follow the investigation that spanned over a decade, and reveal the breakthrough that shocked all of Nebraska. The cold case thought forgotten, now rewritten with loss, persistence, deception, and justice delayed. but never denied. Broken Bow, Nebraska, a small agricultural town in the central plains of the state, where endless cornfields stretch out and life follows the slow rhythm of the seasons. The town has fewer than 8,000 residents, so quiet that even small changes are easily noticed. The Rowe family lived in a two-story wooden house on the southern edge of town, near the dirt road leading to the Platte River. Madeline Rowe, a remarried widow, lived there with her new husband, Ethan Rowe, and her 19-year-old daughter, Clara Rowe, for over 10 years. Clara was a gentle, quiet girl who had just graduated high school and worked part-time at a local grocery store while preparing her application to study in Lincoln that fall. She was known for riding her bike alone in the late afternoons to watch the sunset over the fields. On the evening of August 23, 2006, in the small kitchen of the house, the atmosphere grew tense after a brief argument between Clara and her mother about moving away for school. Ethan, the usually reserved stepfather, sat in the living room, not intervening, but his gaze made the room feel even heavier. Clara fell silent, put on a thin jacket, grabbed her familiar bicycle, and stepped outside as dusk fell. The door closed so softly that Madeline didn't realize it was the last sound she'd hear that night. Clara headed toward the dirt road stretching between the cornfields, where the town's yellow lights gradually faded behind her. A few neighbors along Platte Creek Road said they saw the young girl pass by, her bike's faint light glowing in the darkness, then disappearing as the road curved into the low-lying trees. After that, the night fell silent. No one heard any noise. No one saw Clara return. Madeline woke at dawn, realizing her daughter hadn't come home. Clara's bed was still neatly made, her cell phone on the kitchen table, her wallet and keys still in the jacket hanging by the door. She called a few of her daughter's friends, hoping she had stayed overnight somewhere, but no one knew where Clara was. As the morning passed without news, worry turned to panic. She stepped onto the porch, looking toward the dirt road. Now only early mist and old tire tracks remained. By mid-morning, after searching the nearby area with no sign, the Rowe family decided to call the Broken Bow police to report Clara missing. The call was transferred directly to the office of Sheriff Daniel Harper, who had worked in Custer County for over 20 years and rarely dealt with serious missing persons cases. Harper took down the initial information and quickly arrived at the Rowe house with 2 officers to verify the situation. The 2-story wooden house stood isolated on a large plot, surrounded by cornfields stretching to the horizon. When they arrived, the early sunlight shone through the porch roof, revealing a quiet but uneasy scene. Harper observed the surroundings, no signs of forced entry or disturbance. The front door was locked, windows intact, everything inside tidy. Clara's room was neat, with her cell phone, wallet, and purse still on the table. The bed was made flat, no signs of hurried packing. Harper noted no evidence of planned departure. In the kitchen, Madeline tried to stay calm as she recounted the events. She said Clara left the night before, taking nothing but the bicycle. The argument was only about school, nothing serious. Ethan Rowe, the stepfather, sat across from her, his voice so calm it caught Harper's attention. He said Clara often went out in the evenings to clear her head, might have gone to meet friends, and would surely return soon. Harper didn't comment, only asked him to provide a list of friends or acquaintances Clara usually met. Ethan said he didn't know much because the mother and daughter talked more to each other. After the interview, Harper and the 2 officers checked outside. On the dirt path in front of the porch, he found a series of old bicycle tire tracks leading to the main road connecting to the southern meadows. The small, even tire marks were imprinted on the hard, dry ground, extending to the turn toward the Platte River. Harper paused to observe, noticing nearby a few larger tire tracks, possibly from a truck or pickup, but unclear when they appeared. He took photos to document, then returned to the house. Based on Madeline's account, Clara habitually rode along this road in the late afternoon or early evening, sometimes to the low forest near the river to sit and relax. Harper assessed this as the logical last direction of travel and decided to focus the search there. Before leaving, Harper explained to the family that the search would begin that day before weather could change or evidence be erased. He asked Madeline to prepare identification photos and a description of the clothes Clara wore the previous night to send to the county office. As he returned to the patrol car, Harper told his subordinate that the case could not yet be considered a voluntary departure because the victim took no money, documents, or means of communication. He pointed toward the faint dirt road where it wound through the fields and disappeared into the green forest, and said briefly, "We start there." That afternoon, Harper completed the initial report and sent it to the County Coordination Center. The report stated the scene showed no signs of entry, the victim left by bicycle, and the possibility of an accident or being detained needed consideration. He designated a preliminary search radius of 3 miles from the row house, including the road to the Platte River and the adjacent low forest. The search team was prepared that day, ready to deploy the next morning. None of them knew that the quiet dirt road in front of the house would become the focal point of an investigation lasting many years. Early on the morning of August 25th, the official search was launched with the participation of the Broken Bow Police, the Custer County Rescue Team, a K-9 unit from Kearney, and more than 20 local volunteers. Sheriff Daniel Harper commanded at the scene, standing in the open area where the main road split into 2 branches, one into the cornfields and one leading to the forest along the Platte River. Harper divided the team into 3 groups. The first scanned both sides of the dirt road, the second walked through the meadows, and the third, with the K-9 unit, advanced deep into the low forest. The weather that day was stifling, with a light wind from the river carrying the damp smell of earth, creating a thick, heavy feeling. Everyone was silent, only the sound of boots sinking into the grass and Harper's short commands echoing steadily over the radio. About an hour after starting, the lead group reported a suspicious trace. A series of small tire marks, like bicycle tires, imprinted on the hard, dry ground and extending toward the forest. Along the trail, the soil gradually softened, with some areas deeply sunken from old rainwater. Harper ordered the entire route marked, preserving the scene for photos. The K-9 unit was brought in to track any remaining scent, but it only circled the area, then stopped near the forest edge where the wind shifted. Harper and 2 officers continued another 100 meters or so and spotted a metallic object reflecting light under the canopy. Approaching, they recognized it as a bicycle, a women's model, silver-painted frame, lying tilted on the wet bank. The front wheel was bent sharply to one side, as if from a strong impact, the seat covered in mud. No blood, no signs of struggle around, just a few broken branches and faint soil streaks. Harper measured the distance from the bike to the forest edge and marked the coordinates with a GPS device. Near the bicycle's location, he found additional large truck tire tracks overlapping the softer soil, with a clear tread pattern different from common local vehicles. The tracks extended about 10 meters, then faded on dry ground. Harper paused to observe, noting the thick, heavy marks, possibly from a pickup or small transport truck. He ordered the technical team to photograph, take soil samples from the tread grooves, and collect a few small oil stains nearby. A technician bent down to pick up a small gray fabric thread, caught in dry grass, less than 3 centimeters long, folded into a sealed bag. Harper looked around, considering this area might be where the incident occurred, or at least where Clara stopped last. The entire low forest was temporarily cordoned off in an area over 200 square meters. Police strung tape, marked each discovery point, and documented the scene per protocol. Harper ordered everyone to withdraw to avoid disturbing evidence, then returned to the coordination center to draw an expanded search map. On the topographic map, he marked in red ink the route Clara left home, the bicycle discovery location, and the Riverside Forest area, 3 main points of the day's investigation. He instructed Sergeant Price to contact the state lab in Lincoln to prepare evidence transfer that afternoon. By noon, the scene was basically cleared. The bicycle was wrapped in nylon, placed on a specialized vehicle along with the soil, oil, and fabric samples. Harper personally signed the handover report, checking the seal on each bag before leaving. He lingered for a moment at the forest edge, looking at the dirt road to the riverbank, where afternoon sunlight slid over the faint tire tracks still etched in the soft soil. They were like traces of an unsolved story. Harper jotted a few quick lines in his notebook. Bicycle, bent wheel, no blood. Truck tracks, wet soil, need oil analysis. Then he closed the notebook, got in the car, and returned to the station, carrying all the evidence in sealed containers. That afternoon of August 25th, those evidence containers were transferred to the Nebraska State Crime Lab in Lincoln to begin initial analysis. Harper was present at the handover, listing each sample in detail in the report: the bicycle, soil, oil, fabric, and a few small unidentified objects. He requested the earliest possible results, though he knew state-level DNA testing often took weeks. While waiting, Harper reviewed the technical team's reports, cross-referenced the scene map, trying to find logic connecting the bent-wheel bicycle, large truck tracks, and Clara's complete disappearance. All hypotheses at this point remained mere guesses. A week later, preliminary results were sent back to the Broken Bow police station. The Lincoln lab report stated clearly, no traces of human or animal blood detected on the bicycle, nor any organic samples sufficient for DNA extraction. The examiner's conclusion added that the collected samples were too small for molecular comparison under standards at the time. The soil and oil stains near the scene were identified as common motor oil, with no distinctive features. However, in the sealed bag containing fibers from the grass, there was a gray fabric thread of polyester cotton blend commonly used in men's clothing. Under the microscope, the examiner noted the fabric was stretched, with slight longitudinal fiber breakage, but not distinctive enough for specific sample comparison. The report concluded briefly, no biological evidence or identifiable foreign traces of value at this time. Harper read through all 10 pages of the document, set it down on the table, and thought for quite a while. Although the results showed no direct evidence, he still believed that the area where the bicycle was found could not be mere coincidence. The feeling that Clara had met with foul play right there made it impossible for him to ignore. Among those who could be involved, Ethan Rowe, the stepfather, remained the only name worth considering. His previous statement contradicted a few small details, and his attitude was calm to an incomprehensible degree. Harper decided to inspect the truck that Ethan used regularly, under the reason of verifying movement on the night of the incident. On the morning of September 3rd, Harper arrived at the row house with a technician. Ethan appeared cooperative, agreeing to let the police examine the vehicle. The 2002 silver gray Ford F-150 was parked in the backyard, unusually shiny. Harper bent down, ran his hand along the undercarriage, and noticed the attached dirt had been completely washed away. Inside, the floor was dry, the mats freshly cleaned. He asked Ethan about washing the truck, and the man replied that he wanted to clean up for work in Lincoln next week. Harper made no comment, only noting, vehicle thoroughly cleaned, smells of cleaning solution. The technician proceeded to swab surfaces, searching for fibers, hairs, and any remaining organic material. Under the passenger seat, the vacuum sampler detected 2 tiny objects, later extracted with sterile tweezers, 2 brown hairs about 7 centimeters long, without roots. Additionally, no blood, tissue, or other fluid samples were found. Harper ordered all samples sealed in separate preservation bags, signed for confirmation, and sent directly to Lincoln that same day. The supplemental lab examination report was returned after 4 days. Conclusion: 2 hairs insufficient for nuclear DNA comparison, unable to determine gender or origin. Samples stored in specialized refrigeration per regulations. Harper read the final note and underlined the phrase, unable to determine. He understood that, with 2006 technology, analyzing DNA from rootless hairs was nearly impossible. Nevertheless, He requested all samples be stored in the state evidence vault with his own note, "Potential value, await scientific advancement." The complete report was attached to the case file along with photos of the truck and copies of the examination results. Though there was no direct evidence, Harper felt the chain of data was gradually forming a vague framework. The victim disappeared at night, the bicycle was abandoned, truck tracks appeared near the scene, and in the suspect's vehicle were hairs of unknown origin. He knew that those details, though scattered, could become crucial in the future if technology one day allowed reading what humans currently could not decode. Therefore, in the final report to his superiors, Harper wrote briefly, "Insufficient data for conclusion, but evidence must be preserved long-term for supplemental analysis when technical conditions allow." To him, it was not just procedure, it was the only way to retain the last clue in an unsolved disappearance. After receiving the evidence examination results that yielded no clear leads, Sheriff Daniel Harper decided to refocus on the only individual who could provide more information: Ethan Rowe, the victim's stepfather. He arranged a formal session at the Broken Bow Police Headquarters on September 7, 2006. Ethan arrived on time, neatly dressed, with a calm demeanor that was hard to read. Harper began with basic questions: the last time he saw Clara, his activities that evening, and recent interactions between them. Ethan spoke slowly, clearly, without avoiding the questioner's gaze. According to him, "That night I was home, watching TV, then went to bed early." When Harper asked what program, Ethan replied it was a crime movie on the local channel, but he couldn't remember the name. Harper recorded the entire statement, but what caught his attention was the smoothness of each answer, too seamless, without the hesitation often seen in worried family members. He shifted direction, reminding that Ethan's truck had been thoroughly cleaned just 2 days after Clara's disappearance. Ethan shrugged, saying it was his regular vehicle maintenance habit. "Because I need to keep the truck in good condition for business trips." When Harper asked about his job, he said he worked in agricultural material transport, frequently traveling between towns in the area. The statement was fully recorded, but in his private notes, Harper wrote, "This man talks like someone who has been through an investigation before." While reviewing transactions, Harper asked the administrative staff to check electronic receipts at gas stations around Broken Bow. 4 days later, the report showed a gas purchase under Ethan Rowe's name, paid by credit card at 8:43 p.m. on August 23, the time Clara was believed to have left home. The transaction location was about 27 miles south of the Rowe house, near Highway 2, on the route toward the Platte River. Harper printed a copy of the receipt and kept it in his personal file, viewing it as the first contradiction in Ethan's statement. In the next session, he asked indirectly, "Are you sure you didn't leave the house that night?" Ethan looked straight ahead and reaffirmed, "I was home. If there's a receipt, it must be a mistake, because I sometimes leave my card in the truck." His tone unchanged, calm to the point of indifference. Harper didn't argue, only noting, "Request verification of payment details through the bank." He then shifted to questions about the relationship between Ethan and Clara. The man replied it was normal, but sometimes personalities didn't match, because the young girl was often defiant and emotional. Harper asked if there had been any disagreements before Clara's disappearance. Ethan paused for a few seconds, then answered briefly, "Nothing worth mentioning." During the exchange, Ethan suddenly mentioned having assisted state police in a minor drug case a few years earlier, saying he knew some people in the force and had provided information to them. Harper stopped writing, looked up, feeling this detail was both vague and made the case sensitive. If Ethan's words were true, he might have been a confidential informant, meaning the investigation needed to proceed more cautiously to avoid administrative violations. Harper asked for the contact name in the old case, but Ethan only said, "Can't remember clearly, it was a long time ago." That response made Harper suspect the man was deliberately creating a layer of protection for himself. After the nearly 2-hour session, Harper ended the interrogation. Without physical evidence to cross-reference, all suspicions relied on intuition and unprovable details. He was fully aware that accusing someone based on feeling alone was impossible in criminal procedure. In the summary report, Harper wrote, "Ethan Rowe, last confirmed person with the victim. Statement contradicts transaction data but insufficient criminal basis. Need continued verification of the Platte River adjacent area." That afternoon, Harper returned to his office, looking at the area map hanging on the wall. The red line he had drawn earlier connecting the row house to the riverside forest was now extended to the gas station where the receipt was found. He pinned a small black marker at that location, then wrote a brief note beside it, "Need to check area around riverbank, possible truck movement." Those words would become the next direction in an investigation he knew would not be easy. After completing the interrogation report on Ethan Rowe and examining the contradictions in his statement, Sheriff Daniel Harper decided to refocus on the natural area south of town where the initial search traces had stopped. Professional experience made him believe the answer might still lie somewhere along the Platte River. Harper submitted a request to the Custer County office for additional personnel and equipment to expand the search scope. Just 3 days later, a support team from Lincoln was dispatched, bringing rescue boats, sonar devices, and specialized positioning equipment. The search began in early September, under dry, hot weather conditions, with the river slightly receded after the rainy season. Harper stood at the assembly point, watching the river wind through the vast plains. He divided the force into 2 groups. The shore team responsible for scanning the low forest, the water team for probing the riverbed. Rescue personnel attached sonar sensors to small boats, scanning along both banks over a range of more than 2 miles. The screen displayed many underwater objects, but most were rocks, branches, or animal remains. No signs resembling a bicycle, belongings, or human body. Harper patiently observed each scan image, continuously noting and requesting depth comparisons for each segment. On shore, the manual scanning team moved slowly through the low trees and reed-filled alluvial banks. Tall grass and thick roots made movement difficult, requiring clearing in many areas before inspection. An officer reported finding a few small blue fabric pieces, but after on-site checking, Harper determined they were just debris drifted from upstream. They continued expanding the search downstream, where a section of bank had collapsed due to prior flooding. Harper had it dug up, but beneath the mud were only gravel and wood fragments. Concurrent with field activities, Harper requested the technical department to recollect Clara Rowe's phone data. The carrier's record showed the victim's phone's last signal stopped on the evening of August 23rd in the low forest adjacent to the Platte River, exactly where the bicycle was found. After that time, no further communication. Positioning only pinpointed a radius of about 1,000 meters, too broad for precise narrowing. Harper marked this location on the map, connecting it to the route from the row house to the gas station, forming a triangle that all hypotheses led back to. In the following days, the search team worked continuously from morning to late afternoon. They used metal detectors to check the riverside area, dove to survey deep pools, and continued scanning each grassy bank section. However, results remained the same: no new evidence, no trace of Clara. Harper persistently expanded the scope a few more miles west, where the river curved into a depression. Sonar scans detected a few objects the size of large logs, but upon diving, they were only rotten tree trunks swept from upstream. With each passing day, hope of finding a lead faded further. After nearly 2 weeks, the rescue team's resources began to dwindle. Harper was forced to scale back, retaining only a core group of 6 local officers to continue scanning unchecked areas. He carefully logged every surveyed position, confirmed with GPS coordinates, and stored it as a detailed map. Though fruitless, he tried to maintain pace to avoid closing the case too soon. Many nights, Harper stayed in the office until late, cross-referencing scene photos with topographic maps, searching for any unchecked gaps. By the end of September, after 3 weeks of continuous effort, the official search concluded without new evidence. The comprehensive report, nearly 50 pages thick, only recorded, no physical or biological signs of the victim detected. Deep water areas, scanned by sonar, negative results. Low forest and downstream Platte River fully checked. Harper signed the document, keeping a personal copy in the file. As he folded the stack, he looked up at the photo of the silver bicycle lying tilted at the forest edge, the only remaining clue. He knew every reasonable possibility had been exhausted, but it yielded no answers. The investigation began to stall, and in the internal report to the state level, Harper slowly wrote the final line. After 3 weeks of fruitless search, the case temporarily has no new direction. October 2006, more than 6 weeks after Clara Rowe was reported missing, the official investigation reached a temporary conclusion. Efforts on land and water yielded no results. No new evidence, no additional witnesses, and all collected traces were insufficient for conclusion. Sheriff Daniel Harper spent many days compiling all data, reorganizing hundreds of pages of notes, statements, and technical reports. The result was a 47-page investigation report titled Missing Person Case, Clara Rowe. In the conclusion, Harper wrote briefly, "Insufficient criminal evidence. Victim not located. No basis to determine foul play." The report fully listed all actions taken, search times and areas, interview records of over 10 witnesses, list of evidence collected at the scene, along with examination results from the Lincoln lab. Each item was clearly dated, timed, and assigned responsibility. Harper ordered officers to final scan the entire scene, ensuring no trace was overlooked. After confirming no new leads, he submitted the report to the Custer County office for direction. Superiors agreed with Harper's assessment and announced the case would be temporarily classified as missing person of undetermined cause. That meant the investigation would end until new evidence emerged. During this time, Ethan Rowe suddenly left town. According to information Harper received, Ethan sold the small house on the edge of Broken Bow to a local family and moved to Missouri for job change. The departure was legal, violating no regulations, and since he was not charged, police could not stop it. However, in a private note attached to the report, Harper stated his personal observation, relocation from the area may be to avoid attention. Note for follow-up, if case reopened. Those lines, though merely observational, reflected the suspicion he could not prove. Upon completing all administrative procedures, Harper convened a small meeting with the investigation team. He read the report's conclusion, voice slow. No signs of violence, no witnesses, no usable DNA evidence. He looked around the room, where everyone was silent. The young sergeant asked, "So we consider it closed?" Harper nodded, but didn't answer immediately. After a moment, he only said, "We've done all we can. The rest, perhaps, must wait for science to take a step ahead." That statement was recorded verbatim in the department's internal minutes. On October 14th, the evidence was resealed per long-term storage protocol. The bicycle, soil samples, oil, hairs, and fabric were all packed in specialized boxes, clearly labeled with the code 4476, Clara Rowe. Harper personally signed the sealing confirmation, adding a proposal store indefinitely, may serve reanalysis as DNA technology advances. It was a rare proposal for county-level cases at the time, but he understood biological analysis technology was advancing rapidly, and one day those tiny hairs might speak. At the end of the month, the paper file was transferred to the Nebraska State Central Archives in Lincoln, a facility dedicated to preserving unsolved cases. Harper took a copy back and placed it in his personal file cabinet, along with the old map marked in red ink with the locations he had visited. As he folded the map, the ink faded gradually from repeated folding, much like the case was slowly sinking into the system's oblivion. In his work log, Harper wrote the final line, "Clara Rowe case, temporarily closed. Insufficient criminal evidence. Victim not found. File transferred to cold case status." Once all procedures were complete, Harper cleared his desk, closed the thick stack of documents, and placed it in the metal drawer. He locked it with the old lock and affixed a white label noting the year and case code. Outside, the autumn wind blew through the window, carrying the scent of Nebraska prairie soil. In the quiet room, only the faint rustle of papers remained as he closed the report stack, ending the first phase of the investigation, a disappearance without answers, but never fully forgotten in the old sheriff's mind. Early in 2007, the entire Clara Rowe missing person file was transferred from the Broken Bow Police Department to the Nebraska State Evidence Storage Center in Lincoln, which specializes in handling unsolved or temporarily closed cases. The case was officially coded #4476, accompanied by a detailed inventory of 8 items, 1 silver bicycle, 5 sealed bags containing soil, oil, hair and fabric samples, along with copies of scene reports. Under new state regulations, evidence in missing person cases of undetermined cause must be stored for a minimum of 10 years in sealed conditions, extendable if legal value remains. Clara's samples were placed in cold storage at stable temperature in the shelf labeled M, case 4470, 4480. Sheriff Daniel Harper, after completing all handover procedures, signed the final storage report and returned the warehouse access card. It was also one of the last tasks he performed before retirement. 27 years in the field, Harper had handled dozens of different cases, but Clara Rowe's was the only one that left him feeling something had been left behind. On the day he submitted the file, he stood for quite a while in front of the steel warehouse door. From outside, nothing was visible but long rows of shelves and stacked evidence boxes, each bearing a different code. Harper looked at the white label on Clara's box, the black ink handwriting still clear, Rowe, T, 2006, missing person. After stamping confirmation, he left the building without looking back. That May, Harper officially submitted his retirement application. He cleared his belongings from the small office in Broken Bow, taking only a Nebraska topographic map and the 47-page investigation report copy he had written. In his wooden house on the town's edge, the old documents were carefully stored in a drawer. Friends came to congratulate him, and he only said briefly, "It's time to stop." Afterward, Harper left the force completely, leaving the empty desk and a few unfinished files for his successor. At the State Storage Center, file #4476 was updated in the new management system, assigned an electronic barcode, and moved to long-term preservation. Annually, the inventory department conducted routine checks, ensuring seals remained intact and storage conditions met standards. The 2009 inventory report noted, storage box, #4476, intact, no action required. In subsequent years, the information remained unchanged. The Clara Rowe case gradually disappeared from priority lists, existing only in administrative data as dry lines. Status: inactive. Evidence retained, awaiting further instruction. 12 years passed, and crime investigation technology in the state had advanced tremendously, but hundreds of old files like Rowe's remained untouched in the sealed steel warehouse. Outside, Nebraska changed day by day. Farms expanded, new highways were built, and Broken Bow's population grew by half. Those who participated in the 2006 search had all transferred or retired. No one mentioned the disappearance anymore, except occasionally in staff meetings, when Clara Rowe's name was read in the list of cases with no progress. Each time, the minute takers simply added, "No update." Inside the storage facility, time nearly stood still. Fluorescent lights automatically flicked on and off as people passed, illuminating shelves reaching the ceiling. On one of those shelves, the box labeled #4476 remained in place, next to other forgotten cases. The outer label had yellowed, but Harper's handwriting was still legible. Inside, each evidence bag was sealed in clear nylon, 2 brown hairs, 1 gray fabric piece, soil and oil samples, and a few old printer photos of the scene. No one had opened that box for over a decade. Early in 2018, the state of Nebraska launched a large-scale program called the Cold Case DNA Reanalysis Project. This initiative, coordinated by the State Bureau of Investigation and the Lincoln Forensic Lab, aimed to review and reanalyze all stored samples from unsolved cases between 1980 and 2010. The goal was to leverage advancements in new DNA identification technology, particularly mitochondrial DNA, a method capable of extracting genetic information even from small damaged or rootless hair samples. Over 8,000 old files were randomly selected for retesting in the initial phase. In that list, code hash 4476, the disappearance of Clara Rowe in Broken Bow, was included in the second testing phase. The person directly responsible for reviewing was Amy Holtz, a 34-year-old forensic technician with 8 years of experience at the Lincoln Lab. Her task was to open each file box, check seal integrity, classify usable samples, and log them into the new electronic database. When she reached box hash 4476, Amy noticed the outer label had faded over time, the black ink handwriting nearly blurred but still readable. Row C 2006. Missing person. Inside, the samples were well preserved, 2 hairs in a separate nylon bag, 1 gray fabric piece, 5 soil samples, and a small vial of oil residue. All retained the original seals, signed by Sheriff Daniel Harper. Amy carefully reviewed the original file. The technical description clearly stated the 2 hairs were collected from under the passenger seat of a Ford F-150 truck owned by Ethan Rowe, the victim's stepfather. The 2006 report concluded insufficient nuclear DNA for comparison, but technology at the time did not allow mitochondrial DNA use, now capable of providing 99.9% accuracy. Amy marked box hash 4476 as eligible for supplemental testing. After reporting to her supervisor, she was approved to conduct analysis in early March. The hair samples were transferred to a separate testing area where new generation mitochondrial DNA analysis equipment had just been installed. Amy and a colleague performed extraction under sterile conditions following a nearly 4-hour protocol. After isolating a sufficient trace of genetic material, they loaded the samples into a specialized PCR amplification machine running continuously for 24 hours. While waiting, Amy accessed the National DNA Database to search for the victim's stored profile. Fortunately, in 2006, while the case was active, Broken Bow police had collected Clara's personal hairbrush from her home and sent the sample to state storage. Thus, the victim's original DNA data still existed in the system. When the analyzer finished, results appeared on screen as numerical graphs. The gene sequences were automatically compared to the original sample. The green match line displayed nearly perfect alignment. The software report stated clearly, match confidence 99.9%. Source confirmation, identical mitochondrial sequence. Amy stared at the numbers, a chill running down her spine. She double-checked to rule out error. The result remained unchanged. The 2 hairs from Ethan Rowe's truck matched Clara Rowe's mitochondrial DNA completely. That same afternoon, Amy prepared a preliminary results report, including analysis images and technical parameters. The report was sent via internal electronic system to the Nebraska State Forensic Office and the Nebraska State Patrol Cold Case Unit. On the first page, she noted clearly, samples tested via mitochondrial DNA method. Result, 99.9% match with original victim Clara Rowe profile. Recommend re-evaluation of file hash 4476 under cold case reopen protocol. Per regulations, any reanalysis result exceeding 95% must be immediately forwarded to state investigation level for case reopening consideration. 1 day later, the State Patrol Oversight Department received the Lincoln report. The file was flagged, direct potential criminal involvement, requires immediate review. In the attached list, line hash 4476 was bolded and marked in red. Back at the lab, Amy completed her part, affixing a new label to the file box with the testing date and her confirmation signature. Before storing it again, she opened her personal notebook and wrote briefly, "Clara Rowe case, full mtDNA match, potential for case re-identification." She then turned off the lab lights and left, unaware that her random review had just given a disappearance thought, forgotten for over a decade, a chance to be reopened. In the state's electronic storage system, code hash 4476 was updated to a new status, active review, DNA match pending investigation. April 2018, immediately after the DNA reanalysis report was forwarded to the Nebraska State Patrol, cold case file hash 4476 was officially assigned for reevaluation. The investigator assigned was Grace Whitlow, a new member of the State Bureau's Cold Case Investigation Unit. Grace, 37, had been a forensic examiner before transitioning to field investigation. She had a habit of starting every case by reading the entire original file, no matter how hundreds of pages thick, to reconstruct events chronologically. The Clara Rowe case, stored since 2006, was one of the first she handled in her new unit role. The file arrived at her desk on a spring morning, consisting of 3 thick bound volumes plus the new Lincoln lab testing report. On the cover, Sheriff Daniel Harper's handwriting remained clear. "Insufficient criminal evidence, victim not located." Grace opened each page, carefully reading every note, from scene reports and witness statements to the evidence inventory. She highlighted small details with yellow sticky notes. In the 2006 interrogation section, she lingered on Ethan Rowe's statement, the victim's stepfather. The answers were concise, smooth, almost perfect. But below it, Harper's note caught her attention. "Need to verify movement timeline, potential contradiction with gas receipt." She searched the file appendices and found a copy of a gas receipt under Ethan's name, paid at 8:43 p.m. on August 23, 2006, at the Route 2 station, nearly 27 miles south of the victim's home. This information had been recorded, but not pursued further due to lack of supporting evidence at the time. Harper had only noted, "Need further verification." Later, when the case was shelved, that detail was forgotten among hundreds of pages. Now, with DNA from hairs in Ethan's truck confirmed matching Clara's, that small detail became pivotal. Grace affixed a red flag sticky note to the page corner and wrote, "Receipt matches disappearance time. Reinvestigate travel route." Her next step was to review all vehicle data related to Ethan Rowe. In 2006, personal vehicle GPS was not widespread, but major insurance companies had begun equipping tracking devices for extended coverage policyholders. She submitted a data retrieval request to Great Plains Mutual Insurance, where Ethan had registered his Ford F-150. 3 days later, Grace received a response. The company still retained 2006 raw server GPS logs, undeleted. This surprised her. Data over 10 years old rarely remained intact. Concurrently, Grace contacted the state technical department for assistance decoding the old data format. They recovered the vehicle's movement coordinates from August 22 to 25, 2006. Cross-referencing with Custer County geography, she saw that on the evening of August 23, the truck stopped for nearly 40 minutes on the south bank of the Platte River, less than half a mile from where Clara's bicycle was found. The travel path was clear. The vehicle left the Broken Bow residential area around 7:50 p.m., stopped at the Route 2 station at 8:43, continued south, paused at the Riverside area, then returned northwest near 10 p.m. Looking at this data sequence, Grace knew she held the most critical piece of the case since 2006. She immediately compared the GPS map with Harper's search reports. As suspected, the area where Ethan's truck stopped perfectly overlapped the bicycle discovery point. On her office wall, Grace pinned a large county map, marking each location with red pins: the row house, the gas station, the Riverside forest. A single connecting line stretched from home to the truck stop, the path Clara had taken and possibly Ethan had followed. In her report to superiors, Grace summarized the new findings. DNA reanalysis confirms hairs from Ethan Rowe's Ford F-150 match victim at 99.9%. Recovered GPS data places suspect vehicle at Platte River area on night of August 23, 2006, time of disappearance. The report was signed and sent the same day with a recommendation, full reevaluation of file hash 4476. Requires field investigation and supplemental evidence examination. Before leaving the office, Grace sat quietly looking at the map with the red pins. More than 12 years had passed, but the traces of the case seemed still intact, just waiting to be reconnected with technology and a patient eye. She packed up the file, locked the drawer, and added to her personal notebook, April 19, 2018, Clara Rowe case restarted. Reconstruct all data, verify GPS positioning, and cross-reference witnesses. Goal: find the final answer. The GPS data, obtained from Ethan Rowe's insurance system, quickly became the focal point in reinvestigating the case. After receiving official confirmation from Great Plains Mutual, investigator Grace Whitlow requested the full detailed coordinate logs of the Ford F-150 for the 3 consecutive days before and after Clara Rowe's disappearance. The data was stored as time-position coordinate tables, including thousands of raw information lines. Grace sent the file to the Nebraska State Digital Technical Room for processing and conversion to map format. When the software displayed the results, she clearly saw a travel path marked by red dots, extending from the Broken Bow residential area to the low forest along the Platte River, stopping for about 40 minutes before reversing back. The stop was recorded by the system at 9:12 p.m. on August 23, 2006. The time nearly perfectly matching when Clara was last seen. Grace printed the entire positioning map on large paper, placing it parallel to the scene map Sheriff Harper had created in 2006. The two maps almost overlapped. The truck's stop point was only about half a mile southwest of where the bicycle was found. She circled this area in red pen, noting primary suspect area, need physical scene verification. To strengthen the evidence, Grace reviewed Harper's 2006 soil sample collection report. In the notes, he had described the scene soil as sandy loam, dark brown medium moisture, containing small organic impurities. Coincidentally, in the truck examination report for Ethan, Harper also noted similar soil adhered under the chassis, which had been sampled and sealed. Grace realized this was an opportunity for scientific cross-comparison between the two samples, something not possible with high accuracy in 2006. She contacted the Nebraska State Geology Lab in Lincoln, which had equipment for mineral and soil structure analysis via X-ray spectroscopy. The goal was to compare the sealed soil from under Ethan's truck with samples from the Riverside Forest area. Within a week, the specialists completed the process. Both samples were dried, finely ground, and scanned for mineral composition. The results surprised the team. The match rate reached 95%, meaning nearly the same geological source. The analysis report showed both samples contained characteristic levels of fine quartz silica, along with a high ratio of montmorillonite, a clay mineral found only in a few areas along the south bank of the Platte River. Additionally, organic traces in the samples contained the same type of local plant pollen characteristic of that low forest area. The specialist's conclusion stated clearly, high probability that the two soil samples share the same origin. Grace held the report, feeling the scattered pieces of the 12-year-old case beginning to fit together. She taped the results to the wall next to the map, drawing lines connecting the truck's travel path to the riverbank area. At this point, the chain of events became clear. Clara left home by bicycle. The bicycle was found at the forest edge. That same night, Ethan's truck was in the same area and stopped for over half an hour. Soil from his truck nearly perfectly matched the scene sample. And finally, hairs in the truck matched the victim's DNA. To Grace, this was no longer coincidence. However, to proceed further, she needed legal grounds. Excavation or resurvey of the area required a state court order. She drafted a nearly 30-page request for a search and excavation warrant, compiling all current scientific evidence, the DNA report from the Lincoln Lab, GPS data from Great Plains Mutual, and geological comparison results from the Mineral Lab. In the conclusion, Grace wrote, "Scientific basis indicates high probability that the South Bank Platte River area is the primary scene or location of criminal act. Request Lancaster County Court issue excavation warrant within a 50-meter radius around GPS coordinates 40, 827 degree N, -99, 693 degree W." Before submitting the file, she met with the Cold Case Unit Chief, Lieutenant Ralph Danner, to present directly. Danner, a cautious man who rarely agreed easily, flipped through each page and stopped at the GPS chart. He asked, "Are you sure about the data accuracy?" Grace replied, "This data was extracted from the insurance server with timestamp verification. Minimum margin of error is 3 minutes. Combined with DNA and soil results, we have sufficient basis to consider this the scene." Danner was silent for a few seconds, then signed the confirmation section, saying briefly, "Agree to submit excavation warrant request." That afternoon, Grace left the office with a thick file in hand, feeling a mix of excitement and caution. 12 years earlier, Clara Rowe's case had been shelved for lack of evidence. Now, every past detail was being illuminated again by scientific light. On her desk, she left the final note in her investigation log. May 4, 2018, GPS data confirms Ford F-150 presence at Platte River area on disappearance night. Geological results 95% match. File sufficient for excavation warrant request. Goal: seek tangible evidence. As she set down the pen, those words marked the first turning point in the journey to decode Nebraska's seemingly forgotten disappearance. On the morning of May 12, 2018, after the Lancaster County Court approved the excavation warrant, the Nebraska State Patrol Forensic Team arrived at the south bank of the Platte River, exactly the coordinates recorded by the Ford F-150's GPS data on the night of August 23, 2006. This area was deep in the low forest, nearly a mile from the main road, accessible only by specialized vehicles. Grass grew waist-high, rows of riverside willows casting shadows over the dark brown clay soil. Upon arrival, investigator Grace Whitlow directly commanded the survey. She divided the excavation area into a 50-meter radius around the central coordinates, using reflective rope and stakes to mark 5x5-meter grids for forensic accuracy. The morning began with panoramic photos and topographic mapping. A drone was flown in circles, recording overhead footage for original data storage. Then technicians started digging the first soil layer in the western area, where geology showed low compaction, likely disturbed. About an hour later, when the first shovel hit moist soil, the smell of mud and decaying plants filled the air thickly. Technicians took soil samples layer by layer, noting depths. At about 40 centimeters deep, one worker discovered a small hard object mixed in the clay, a dark fabric piece, still tough to the touch despite darkening over time. Grace ordered digging halted and called the scene photography team. The fabric was lifted with tongs and placed in a sterile tray. Under sunlight, faint patterns emerged, seemingly part of a jacket or pants. She noted the position, sealed it, and labeled sample 12. 8A. Excavation continued, now focusing on soil near the bank, where a magnetic scanner detected an anomaly. After nearly 3 hours, a technician bent down and said quietly, "Bones." Everyone stopped immediately. An area about half a square meter was cordoned off. Beneath the fine mud, small bone segments appeared, ivory gray, mixed with roots. Shape and curvature indicated human bones, specifically forearm and partial rib. The scene was fully sealed. Forensic experts in protective gear used soft brushes and small trowels to peel away soil layers around the bones. The entire area was tented to avoid direct sun and wind. The process lasted until afternoon. When the main skeletal frame was exposed, the forensic team confirmed it was part of an adult female body. Not the full body, only scattered bone portions in the clay layer, likely disturbed by years of river erosion. Near the arm bone, a dimly shining metal object reflected light. Grace bent down and recognized it as a deformed bullet, its outer casing warped. The technician measured the diameter, preliminarily identifying it as 9 mm. Evidence was handled carefully per forensic protocol. Each bone, soil, and object placed separately in specialized plastic boxes, numbered, photographed, and noted with exact coordinates. Grace signed confirmation on each sealed bag, double-checking the full list. As dusk fell, the excavation site was lit with high-power lamps to complete the initial phase. The forensic team's preliminary report stated, discovered partial unidentified female human remains, along with dark fabric piece and 9 mm metal bullet. Seen within coordinates 40, 827 degree N 99, 693 degree W, fully matching suspect vehicle stop point. After collection, the specialized convoy left the area at 8:15 p.m. On the vehicles, evidence boxes were stacked in temperature-controlled containers, transferred directly to the Lincoln Forensic Lab for preservation and examination. Grace stayed until the scene was sealed and handed over to local police for overnight guard. She stood looking at the dug-up ground, where reflective stakes glimmered under vehicle lights. In the silence, the Platte River flowed steadily, carrying the smell of damp mud and swaying tree branches. Before leaving, she wrote the final line in the scene log, May 12, 2018. Excavation completed at Platte River area. Discovered human bones, dark fabric piece, and 9 mm bullet. Coordinates match Ford F-150 GPS data for Ethan Rowe. Evidence sealed, transferred to Lincoln for detailed examination. As the vehicle left the riverbank, headlights pierced the low forest, reflecting on the calm water. 12 years after the night Clara Rowe vanished, this place had finally revealed the first traces of truth buried deep under the Platte River soil. 3 weeks after the excavation at the south bank of the Platte River, the Nebraska State Forensic Lab completed the initial examination phase for all recovered evidence. On June 2, 2018, the preliminary report was sent to investigator Grace Whitlow, who had closely monitored the process since sample intake. The nearly 60-page document prioritized DNA results. The Forensic Biology Department report stated clearly, nuclear DNA successfully extracted from long bone sample collected at Platte River scene. Comparison with stored Clara Rowe DNA data shows 99.99% match. It was the final confirmation Grace had awaited for weeks. The bones found at the excavation site were Clara Rowe's. She read each line slowly, checking every parameter before signing receipt. In the conclusion section, the lead examiner added, bone condition shows fracture traces from mechanical impact, consistent with close-range gunshot injury. Remaining organic material on arm bone surface may indicate bullet penetration. Grace highlighted this in red pen, moving to the ballistics section. The deformed bullet recovered at the scene had been cleaned and viewed under a comparison microscope. The report concluded, bullet is 9 mm Luger type, lead core with copper jacket, common for semi-automatic handguns. Barrel rifling characteristics match Smith & Wesson M&P 9 mm. Grace immediately cross-checked the 2006 file in Ethan Rowe's legal property list. A Smith & Wesson M&P 9 mm was registered in May 2006. She affixed a sticky note to the report page, underlining matches suspect-owned firearm type. This coincidence, combined with GPS and DNA data, formed the strongest evidence chain the case had ever had. The subsequent chemical examination confirmed soil adhered to the dark fabric piece from the scene, had mineral composition matching 94% with the 2006 sample from under Ethan's truck. The state geology lab analysis stated, mineral content and organic impurities nearly perfectly consistent. Samples contained same pollen type and microsediment from silver willow species unique to South Bank Platte River area. This further reinforced that Ethan's truck had been at the exact location where Clara's body was found. Additionally, material examiners discovered on the dark fabric faint gray synthetic fibers matching the upholstery fabric of a 2002 Ford F-150, the model Ethan owned. The report noted, "Cannot rule out direct contact between vehicle interior material and scene fabric sample." Grace read this, took a deep breath, and closed the document stack. She understood the evidence chain was now closed. DNA confirmed the victim. Ballistics pointed to a weapon matching the suspect's gun, soil and fabric directly linked to his truck. No room left for chance. That same afternoon, Grace scheduled a meeting with Cold Case Unit Chief Lieutenant Ralph Danner to present the results. In the small Lincoln headquarters conference room, she spread out the full map, scene photos, and forensic reports on the table. Each piece of evidence was placed side by side, connected by red lines. Bone DNA matches victim at 99.99%. Bullet matches Ethan Rowe's 2006 registered gun. GPS data places truck at exact excavation site. Soil and fabric match geology. "This is a closed chain," she said decisively. Danner was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. Time for the next step. He signed the comprehensive report authorizing preparation of an arrest warrant file. That night, Grace sat alone in the office, finalizing the documents. The white light shone on the thick stacks of paper, each detail arranged in chronological order, from the evening Clara left home to when the evidence was found. In the summary sent to the state prosecutor, she wrote, "The scientific examination results provide authenticated basis for determining that victim Clara Rowe was murdered with a 9mm weapon. The evidence chain directly links suspect Ethan Rowe to the crime scene." As the clock neared midnight, she signed the final page of the report, noting the date, June 2, 2018. The nearly 100-page file was neatly placed in a large envelope, labeled in red. "Request for arrest warrant, Ethan Rowe." Before leaving the office, Grace paused to look through the glass window, where the city of Lincoln was immersed in the golden lights of early summer night. 12 years after the case was left open, every scattered piece of evidence had now been connected by technology and persistence. She knew that from this moment, the investigation had entered an irreversible phase, the phase where justice finally took shape with undeniable proof. June 6, 2018, just 4 days after Grace Whitlow completed the arrest warrant request report. The Lancaster County Court officially approved the warrant and detention order for Ethan Rowe on charges of second-degree murder. The order was immediately forwarded to the Nebraska State Police Office and simultaneously sent to the FBI Kansas City branch, as the latest information indicated Ethan had been living in Missouri for nearly 10 years. He lived alone in a small apartment south of Kansas City, working seasonally for a private transport company. Grace and 2 agents were assigned to coordinate surveillance and execute the arrest. On the afternoon of June 8, the surveillance team began monitoring the neighborhood where Ethan lived. From a surveillance vehicle parked half a block away, Grace observed through binoculars a middle-aged man with graying hair, slightly stooped posture, leaving the house every morning at 7, driving a silver-gray pickup, still a Ford F-150, newer model, but registered under the same name. His activities were ordinary to the point of tedium, going to work, stopping at a gas station, returning home. However, what Grace held was no longer suspicion. She had GPS data, DNA reports, ballistics, and geological examination results. An undeniable chain of evidence. After 2 days of surveillance, at 7:40 p.m. on June 9, as Ethan left the apartment to drive to a nearby grocery store, the Kansas City Task Force received the order to act. 3 patrol vehicles blocked both ends of the street, while Grace and Agent Harris approached from behind. As the pickup stopped at a red light, they advanced simultaneously. "Nebraska State Police, hands off the wheel," the shout rang out amid heavy traffic. Ethan was ordered to step out, hands raised high. He did not resist, only looking around with calm surprise. The arrest warrant was read aloud on the street, witnessed by local police. Handcuffs were applied, neat and decisive. Immediately after being subdued, police executed an emergency search warrant on Ethan's apartment in the Maple Ridge complex. The small, tidy apartment had almost no personal items beyond some papers and a few boxes of old documents. In the desk drawer, investigators found a brown leather-bound notebook filled with numbers and symbols. When Grace flipped to the middle page, she saw handwritten GPS coordinates: 4827 degree N, 99, 693 degree W. The numbers matched exactly, digit for digit, the excavation site where Clara Rowe's body was discovered. Below the coordinates, only a short note: Platte, 8/23. This discovery was documented on site. The notebook, along with all electronic devices, laptop, portable hard drive, phone, were seized, sealed, and transferred to the State Criminal Technical Department for data extraction. Additionally, in the wooden cabinet beside the bed, police recovered an unopened box of 9mm Luger ammunition, along with an old firearm permit in Ethan Rowe's name. When asked about the purpose of keeping it, he simply replied, "A memento from the old gun I sold." That explanation was recorded verbatim in the search report, with confirmation signature. After completing procedures, Ethan was escorted to the Kansas City Federal Detention Center overnight awaiting transfer. The next morning, Nebraska State Police arrived to take custody. As he was led to the vehicle, he said nothing, only turning back to look at the old building where he had lived for nearly 10 years. Grace walked behind, holding the arrest file. On the trip back to Nebraska, she logged the timelines in her work notebook. 10:15. Subject handover, 10:35. Departure, 16:20. Arrival in Lincoln. Throughout the over 400-kilometer journey, Ethan remained silent, requesting no attorney, asking no specific reasons. Only once, when the vehicle stopped for gas, he looked out the window and said softly, "I guessed this would finally come." At the Nebraska State Patrol headquarters in Lincoln, Ethan was formally received and temporarily detained pending interrogation. Grace personally prepared the handover report, simultaneously sending the notebook with coordinates to the digital examination room for priority processing. In the arrest report, she noted clearly, "Subject Ethan Rowe arrested per Lancaster County Court warrant after 48 hours surveillance in Kansas City, Missouri. At residence, seized notebook with coordinates matching victim Clara Rowe body excavation area." Upon completing all procedures, Grace stood before the interrogation room, looking through the one-way glass. Inside, Ethan sat straight-backed, hands on the table, face expressionless. Under the white light, his gray hair made him appear cold and distant. 12 years earlier, this man had appeared in Harper's report as a suspect without sufficient evidence. Now every piece led back to him. Grace folded the file, took a deep breath before entering the room, preparing for the first confrontation with the man believed to have hidden the case's greatest secret for over a decade. The formal interrogation of Ethan Rowe took place on the morning of June 11, 2018, in the Nebraska State Patrol investigation room in Lincoln. The room was spacious, gray walls, with only a metal table and 2 facing chairs. Surveillance cameras were activated before the suspect entered. Ethan sat upright, hands clasped, demeanor calm as if attending a routine meeting. Investigator Grace Whitlow led the interrogation, joined by Assistant Prosecutor Michael Lerner and a police note-taker. From the start, Ethan maintained politeness, voice low and even. When Grace informed him of his right to remain silent and right to an attorney, he only nodded, "I understand." No request for legal representation, no strong reaction, just silent observation of everyone in the room. Grace began with basic questions: residence, work, current routine, then gradually shifted to issues related to Clara Rowe. Upon hearing the victim's name, Ethan looked up, responding slowly, "I don't know where she is. I discussed this over 10 years ago." Grace repeated, "Can you explain why your vehicle was confirmed present at the Platte River area on the night of August 23, 2006? He slightly raised an eyebrow, then replied, voice still even, "I don't remember, maybe I was working, or someone borrowed the truck." Grace opened the laptop, Projecting the GPS map on screen, the vehicle's travel path clearly shown, matching the disappearance time. This data was extracted from your insurance system, uneditable. You stopped at the exact location where Clara Rowe's body was found. Ethan fell silent, leaning back in the chair, eyes straight ahead, showing neither surprise nor objection. She continued, presenting forensic reports. DNA results from 2 hairs in his truck, matching the victim at 99.99%. He glanced at the document stack, but did not lean to look. If that's her hair, maybe because she rode in my truck. We lived in the same house, didn't we? He said, voice almost mocking. Grace did not respond, only sliding another photo stack across the table. The 9mm bullet found beside the body, with examination results matching the gun Ethan registered in 2006. He glanced briefly, smiling faintly. Common gun. Millions own the same type nationwide. Each piece of evidence Grace presented, each of Ethan's responses was fully recorded in the minutes. She noticed in him something different from typical fear or resistance. A calculated cold calm. Whenever pressed, he paused a few seconds, breathed evenly, then answered briefly, absolutely no emotion revealed. When Grace mentioned the notebook with excavation site coordinates, his eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing. She asked, "Why did you record coordinates exactly matching where we found the body?" Ethan pressed his lips, then replied lightly, "Old coordinates. I worked in transport. Noting locations is a habit." After that, he fell completely silent. For over 2 hours of interrogation, Ethan maintained unchanged posture, breathing steady, gaze focused, almost unblinking. Whenever Grace asked direct questions about the disappearance night, he either said, "Don't remember," or chose silence. When prosecutor Lerner asked the final question, "Do you admit to killing Clara Rowe?" Ethan tilted his head toward him, saying softly, "No, I didn't kill anyone." Then sat still, gaze empty. No fear, no defense, just prolonged silence until Grace declared the interrogation over. In the official interrogation minutes, Grace wrote, "Suspect cooperative within limits," but refused to answer many key questions. No signs of anxiety or panic, maintained high emotional control, no change in body language despite confrontation with evidence. She underlined, "abnormal emotional control," and added in the margin, "need criminal psychological evaluation if interrogation continues." That same afternoon, the file was transferred to the Nebraska State Prosecutor's Office. Based on the physical evidence chain, DNA, GPS data, ballistics, and geology, Chief Prosecutor Karen Wills signed the decision to indict Ethan Rowe for second-degree murder, under Nebraska Criminal Code Section 28. In the preliminary indictment, she wrote, "Evidence obtained shows defendant's actions had intent, leading to the death of citizen Clara Rowe on the night of August 23, 2006. Scientific examination results proved defendant's presence at the crime scene and direct connection between victim and defendant's vehicle." That evening, upon receiving notification of the indictment decision, Grace returned to the office, sitting before the board covered in notes. She looked at the red lines connecting from Clara's house to the Platte River bank, from GPS data to the 9mm bullet, then stopping at the victim's old photo. 12 years, everything seemed silenced, now moving again. In her investigation log, she wrote the day's final line, June 11, 2018, "Suspect Ethan Rowe, officially indicted for second-degree murder. Remained silent before evidence. Attitude, controlled, cold, uncooperative." She set down the pen, closed the notebook, and in the quiet night moment, knew the case had entered an irreversible phase, from suspicion to prosecution, from darkness to the light of law. Immediately after the indictment was issued, investigator Grace Whitlow began the final task within her responsibility, completing the full prosecution file for the Clara Rowe case. A case left open for over 12 years. Her goal was to build a tightly logical chain, leaving no gaps that could cause jury doubt. The file had to show that all evidence from DNA, GPS, ballistics to geology unified and pointed to one person, Ethan Rowe. Grace worked continuously for days, nearly living in the cold case unit office in Lincoln. On the wall was a large board covered with notes, scene photos and timelines connected by charts. Each piece of evidence was color-coded. Red for DNA, blue for GPS, yellow for ballistics, brown for geology. Under night lights, the strings between papers resembled a maze map where every exit converged on one point, the name Ethan Rowe. The first section was biological evidence. The Lincoln Lab DNA report confirmed bones found at the Platte River site matched Clara Rowe's stored DNA at 99.99% reliability. 2 hairs from Ethan's Ford F-150 also matched at 99.9% via mitochondrial DNA. This was a direct, indisputable link between victim and suspect's vehicle. Grace clearly presented the sample custody chain, collected in 2006, sealed by Sheriff Daniel Harper, stored at State Center, retested in 2018, all supervised and untampered. The second section was GPS data, provided by Great Plains Mutual Insurance. Detailed coordinate logs showed on the evening of August 23, 2006, Ethan's vehicle left Broken Bow residential area at 7:50 p.m. Stopped at Route 2 gas station at 8:43, then traveled to the South Bank Platte River and stopped for 40 minutes. Exact location of body discovery. It then returned northwest, arriving home near 10 p.m. Timelines matched precisely with Clara's reported disappearance. Grace included printed positioning map photos, with technician certification confirming data uneditable as stored on 2006 insurance servers. The third section was ballistics examination. The 9mm bullet found beside Clara's body was compared to barrel rifling samples of the Smith & Wesson M&P Ethan, registered in 2006. Results confirmed 6 right-hand grooves, 1 10-inch twist, perfect match to Ethan's gun model. Copies of valid gun registration and 9mm Luger ammunition purchase receipt found at his Kansas City home were attached as supplemental evidence. Grace noted in the file, gun not found, but indirect evidence proves weapon and ballistics match with suspect. The final section was geological analysis results. Soil from under Ethan's truck and soil on scene fabric matched 95% in mineral composition, with characteristic pollen and microorganisms unique to the South Bank Platte River area. The Nebraska State Geology Lab report confirmed high probability samples share origin. Grace emphasized this as environmental evidence, often overlooked, but proving suspect's vehicle movement location. After compiling the 4 main evidence groups, Grace drafted the investigative logic chain analysis. She presented in sequence: 1. Clara Rowe left home evening of August 23, 2006, last seen heading toward Platte River. 2. Ethan Rowe's vehicle traveled to same area, recorded by GPS and gas receipt. 3. Clara's DNA found in Ethan's vehicle. 4. Clara's body discovered at exact vehicle stop location. 5. Bullet at scene matches Ethan's owned gun type. 6. Soil on vehicle and at scene nearly perfect match. Conclusion: Ethan Rowe's presence at crime scene and direct links between suspect, victim, vehicle, weapon clearly established. Grace reviewed the entire file 3 times, editing every small detail in legal citations for tightness. She added annotations citing Nebraska Criminal Code Section 28:304 on second-degree murder, along with provisions on circumstantial evidence in witnessless homicides. Her conclusion was just 2 sentences: all physical evidence and investigative data form a closed chain, excluding all other possibilities. Ethan Rowe is the only individual with motive, means, and opportunity to commit the crime. June 15, 2018, the file was printed in 3 copies, stamped confidential, with appendices, including scene photos, DNA comparison tables, GPS graphs, and geological results. Grace personally delivered the nearly 200-page file to the Lincoln County Prosecutor's Office. Upon signing the handover, she said briefly to the clerk, "File complete. No gaps." That afternoon, Returning to the office, Grace removed all sticky notes from the board. Each photo, each red line was taken down, leaving only the Nebraska map with a single pin at the South Bank Platte River location. She stood silently for a moment, then wrote the final line in her investigation log. June 15, 2018. Prosecution file completed. Transferred to Lincoln County Prosecutor. Logic chain closed. No loose links. She then turned off the light, closed the door, leaving behind the dim glow of the map board, where every trace of the Clara Rowe case had been connected by science and persistence. Immediately after the prosecution file was transferred to the Lincoln County Prosecutor's Office, Chief Prosecutor Karen Wills requested an additional critical step, a criminal psychological analysis of suspect Ethan Rowe to strengthen the motive evaluation and danger level in the indictment. The task was assigned to Dr. Paul Renner, a criminal behavior expert from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, who had collaborated with the FBI on numerous complex criminal cases. Renner began by reading the entire interrogation transcript, personal file, examination results, and investigator Grace Whitlow's report. He paid special attention to Grace's description in the June 11, 2018 minutes. Suspect maintained high emotional control, no reaction to confronting evidence. From this he concluded that Ethan exhibited a manipulative personality with superior behavioral self-control, common in individuals prone to manipulating others rather than impulsive violence. In the preliminary analysis, Renner wrote, "Ethan Rowe is not an impulsive offender. He calculates, anticipates situations, and acts within parameters he can fully control." Ethan's personal file was retrieved from federal administrative data and court records in states where he had resided. A clearer picture emerged. Ethan had 2 minor prior convictions for financial fraud in the 1990s, both resolved with suspended sentences. In both cases, he falsified occupational information and claimed to be cooperating with law enforcement to gain partner trust. In some old documents, he even signed as an informant for Iowa State Police, though the agency later confirmed no official collaboration. Dr. Renner assessed that self-creating an image as connected to police was typical behavior of individuals seeking indirect power, wanting to control others through fabricated credibility and competence. This aligned with Ethan's family life conduct, cold, closed off, but liking to create the feeling he knew more than others. Witnesses who knew him in Broken Bow stated Ethan often boasted of helping police in a few cases and always acted like someone familiar with investigation procedures. The psychological report also noted the contrast between Ethan's calm exterior and emotion-concealing ability. Throughout interrogation, he showed no fear, anger, or remorse, only control and emotional detachment. Renner wrote, "Behaviorally, this is characteristic of an educated antisocial personality who understands the law, knows procedural boundaries, and exploits them to maintain control." In analyzing the murder motive, the expert team re-examined the victim's family circumstances. The 2006 file showed Clara Rowe had conflicts with her mother and stepfather over moving to Lincoln for school. Victim's mother, Madeline Rowe's statement indicated Ethan was often controlling, disagreeing with Clara living independently, citing, "She's not mature enough." Some of Clara's friends said she complained that he tracked every move, even when mom didn't know. Renner concluded, "This is typical controlling behavior in the family environment, the root of many possession-related homicides." Psychologists also examined Ethan's post-disappearance behavior. Leaving Nebraska just months after the investigation paused, living anonymously in Missouri, and maintaining a reclusive lifestyle for over 10 years was seen as calculated avoidance, not impulsive fear. In his Kansas City rental records, he listed his occupation as security consultant, a vague title but helping maintain an image of legal knowledge. Here, Renner assessed Ethan maintained control even when withdrawing from the scene. He recreated a new environment where he still held superior status, albeit verbally. To complete the evaluation, Grace proposed a direct criminal psychological examination of Ethan at the Lincoln Detention Center. The 4-hour exam included physiological response tests and behavioral cognition questions. Results were compiled by Renner in a 22-page report. Ethan had low empathy, avoidance of responsibility, and a mindset controlling social relationships via information or symbolic power. When asked about Clara, he only said, "The kid always thought she was right," and did not refer to the victim by full name. This response was noted as emotional detachment from actions, common in offenders, consciously justifying their behavior. The expert team's conclusion: Ethan Rowe exhibits manipulative, deceptive behavior, capable of planning and executing criminal acts without guilt. Murder motive likely stemmed from family conflict, combined with absolute control need over the victim. When Clara expressed intent to leave his control, Ethan acted to reassert personal power. The report was attached to the supplemental prosecution file for prosecutor Karen Wills. In the final section, Renner wrote a brief sentence: "With Ethan Rowe, murder did not stem from momentary anger, but from an obsession with control. When unable to control verbally, he used action to end any possibility of losing control." Upon finishing the analysis, Grace closed the document stack, silently looking at the underlined conclusion. 12 years earlier, the case was scattered fragments. Now not only physical evidence, but criminal psychology had closed a portrait. A man living by manipulation, and when losing that power, choosing the only way to regain it, taking another's life. February 2019, nearly 13 years after Clara Rowe was reported missing, the trial of Ethan Rowe officially opened at Lancaster County Court in Lincoln, Nebraska. Local media called it the cold case of the decade, not just for the duration, but because the entire breakthrough relied almost entirely on scientific evidence. No witnesses, no confession, only pure forensic data arranged into a perfect logical chain. The trial lasted 10 days, with 12 jury members, Chief Prosecutor Karen Wills representing Nebraska, and court-appointed defense attorney Mark Hensley for the defendant. Ethan Rowe appeared in a gray suit, gray hair, calm gaze. He said nothing upon entering the courtroom, only nodding slightly when asked to confirm identity. In the opening statement, Prosecutor Wills began firmly, "This is not a case of assumption. This is a case of truth, proven by science." She then presented a summary of 4 evidence pillars: DNA, GPS, ballistics, and geology, the factors closing the investigation circle. Expert witnesses were called sequentially. First was Amy Holtz, the forensic technician who discovered the 2018 DNA match. Amy explained the mitochondrial DNA testing process in detail, presenting comparison graphs between hairs from Ethan's Ford F-150 and Clara Rowe's original DNA sample. "No doubt remains," she said. "The 2 samples share biological origin." The jury fell silent as images appeared on screen. 2 gene sequences in perfect alignment. Next was investigator Grace Whitlow, who led the case reactivation. In over 3 hours of testimony, Grace presented the full reinvestigation process, from rediscovering the forgotten gas receipt, retrieving GPS data, to excavation and sampling. She pointed to the large projected wall map, where a red line showed Ethan's vehicle path leading straight to the body discovery point. "Every seemingly scattered 2006 data piece is now connected," Grace said. "All lead to one location, one person, and one single night." Prosecution also called Dr. Paul Renner, the criminal psychology expert, to the witness stand to explain motive. He described Ethan as having absolute control need, having impersonated a police collaborator to bolster personal power. Renner read his report conclusion: "When unable to control verbally, he used action to end the possibility of losing control." The courtroom was dead silent. Defense focused on challenging the circumstantial nature of evidence. Attorney Hensley argued no proof. Ethan was the only vehicle user, and no witnesses saw the crime. A hair, soil sample, bullet, all possibilities, not certainties, he argued. But prosecution countered immediately: "True, no witnesses, but there is science. DNA doesn't lie. GPS data isn't fabricated. Geology can't move itself, and only one person has all three matching traces, Ethan Rowe. In the defense phase, Ethan was allowed a brief statement. He stepped to the stand, voice low, unnaturally calm. "I didn't kill Clara. I said that years ago, and it's still true today. What you heard is hypothesis attached by machines. I didn't control anyone, and I didn't kill." No one in the room reacted. Prosecution asked no further questions. His image, an old man, cold, empty gaze, appeared on the small press TV screen, clearly depicting the void in his denial. On the 10th day of trial, after hearing all testimony and reviewing evidence, the jury retired to deliberate. Discussion lasted 4 hours. Upon return, courtroom tension peaked. The clerk read the verdict. The jury unanimously finds defendant Ethan Rowe guilty of second-degree murder under Section 28(304) of the Nebraska Criminal Code. Ethan showed no surprise. He only nodded slightly, eyes downward. Showed no surprise. He only nodded slightly, eyes downward. Judge Alan McKenzie read the sentencing that same afternoon. He stated clearly, "The court recognizes the severity of the criminal act, particularly as the defendant intentionally concealed the victim's body for an extended period, obstructing justice. Therefore, defendant Ethan Rowe is sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole." A moment of silence enveloped the room. Madeline Rowe, the victim's mother, sat in the front row, clutching her daughter's photo tightly, tears silently streaming down. As he was escorted out of the courtroom, Ethan turned back once, expressionless, saying softly to the nearby officer, "I knew this outcome long ago." Those words were recorded in the trial minutes, like a final note for a case spanning over a decade. The sentence was signed that day, ending the longest investigation in Lancaster County history. Local media reported briefly, Ethan Rowe, 63, sentenced to life without parole for second-degree murder. Clara Rowe case, missing since 2006, officially closed by court verdict. In the final file sent to the state, investigator Grace Whitlow noted, verdict, guilty, penalty, life. Basis, absolute scientific evidence. To her, it was not just the end of a case, but confirmation that after over 12 years, justice had finally found its way back. March 2019, just weeks after the life sentence without parole for Ethan Rowe was pronounced, investigator Grace Whitlow began her final task in the case, completing the comprehensive investigation summary report for the Nebraska State Bureau of Investigation. On the file cover, she wrote a concise yet profound title, Case #4476, closed after 12 years. It was the line Sheriff Daniel Harper had once hoped would one day be written, and now Grace was the one to fulfill it for him. The over 80-page report compiled the entire case-breaking process from the evening Clara Rowe vanished in 2006 to Ethan Rowe's conviction trial in early 2019. She opened with a summary line, "The Clara Rowe case exemplifies the decisive role of forensic science technology in reopening files thought permanently silenced." The initial section recapped all timelines. The original broken bow search, the few preserved evidence items in storage, the case closure then reactivation over 12 years later via a DNA review program. She specifically noted that without Harper's 2006 decision to retain evidence, the case likely would never have been solved. In the forensic overview section, Grace detailed how modern technologies connected seemingly meaningless data. Mitochondrial DNA, archived GPS analysis, spectroscopic geology comparison, and digital ballistics examination. She wrote, "Each method alone is a small piece. Combined, they form a unified evidence chain, eliminating all error possibilities." Below, she listed each evidence group, numbered and noting storage status, victim hairs and bones cold storage, 9mm bullet, metal sealed, soil and fabric samples, state evidence vault, GPS data copies, state patrol server, all stamped archived, research use authorized, permitting future operational research use. The report also dedicated a chapter to human factors, individuals contributing to the final outcome. Grace listed each: Sheriff Daniel Harper, forensic technician Amy Holtz, cold case chief Ralph Danner, psychologist Paul Renner, and Lincoln forensic team members. She ended the list with a brief thanks. None sought recognition, they only wanted the truth spoken. In the professional evaluation section, Grace described the Clara Rowe case as a model study for Nebraska's cold case training programs. She outlined key points. 1. Importance of evidence preservation. Every item, however small, holds potential value as technology advances. 2. DNA technology and digital data, two factors unlocking long-pending cases. 3. Interagency coordination, combination of local forces, state labs, and prosecution is success key. 4. Societal impact. Case resolution not only closes files, but restores faith in the justice system. In the final chapter, she concluded briefly, Case #4476 proves justice does not vanish. It only awaits sufficient tools for enforcement. Below, she quoted Harper's old report line, "The rest may have to wait until science takes one step ahead." Now, that statement had become uncannily prophetic. March 25, 2019. Grace delivered the completed file to the Nebraska State Judicial Archives. There, she handed over all original evidence with the electronic report for permanent storage. The archivist signed confirmation, labeled "Closed Case" on the DNA sample box, and placed it on the shelf with resolved cases. Seeing #4476, Rowe, Clara, boldly printed on the storage tag, Grace stood silently for a moment. To her, it was not just a number ending a case, but a symbol of time, of persistence spanning over a decade to keep a name from being forgotten. After leaving the building, Grace sent a report copy to the Nebraska Justice Academy per Prosecutor Will's request for use in the Forensic Renewal Project training. The report was selected as the first illustrative example in the DNA Analysis in Pending Files course, alongside a famous 2009 Iowa case. In the attached email, she wrote, "If the Clara Rowe case could close after 12 years, any file can, as long as we don't forget it." That same afternoon, Grace returned to the office. The wall map now had only one remaining pin at the south bank of the Platte River. She removed the pin, rolled up the map, placed it in the drawer, and locked it. In her work log, she wrote the final line, March 25, 2019. Comprehensive summary report completed. Clara Rowe case officially closed. All evidence archived for operational research. Cold case success. Justice delivered. As she closed the notebook, she looked out the window where spring sunlight covered Lincoln. 12 years, one case, and finally, the truth had been returned to its rightful place. The Clara Rowe case is not just a crime story closed after 12 years, but also reflects deeper issues in contemporary American society, where technology, justice, and people stand in tense interplay between progress and error. When Clara vanished in 2006, Nebraska's justice system was fragmented, lacking data connectivity and unified evidence preservation protocols. That flaw delayed justice for over a decade. But the persistence of individuals like Daniel Harper, who retained evidence unrequired, or Grace Whitlow, the investigator believing in forensic science's power, proved that one responsible act, one right decision, can alter an entire person's fate. In today's America, where faith in the legal system is sometimes challenged by information complexity and speed, the Clara Rowe story reminds that justice needs time, but steadfastness and transparency ensure it never vanishes. It also highlights investing in science and data. DNA, GPS, and geology technologies revived truth after 12 silent years. The lesson for us in every field, from law, medicine, to social governance, progress only matters when built on ethics and human dedication. And as Nebraska did post-case reforming systems, enacting evidence storage laws, expanding federal cooperation, today's America must continue investing in justice, not just with budgets, but with belief that truth, however long buried, deserves to be found. If you believe justice never sleeps and truth always needs science's light, please subscribe to the channel to follow more cold cases emerging from darkness with us. Thank you for joining the Clara Rose story, file #4476. See you in the next video with another justice-seeking journey across America.